In a few months, the Nintendo Switch will be 3 years old, and although that probably means that we're likely only about halfway through its life, I've got no issue saying that it is indeed one of my all-time favourite game consoles. Sure, it's got some incredible first-party exclusives that, as always is the way, are some of the very best in the business, but you don't need me to tell you that. You're just going to go and buy those ones anyway. Today, instead of talking about the obvious, I'm going to talk about the not so obvious. There'll be a couple of games that you have heard of here before, but I'm guessing that most of these retro-inspired games or retro collections you haven't heard of before. And if you're anything like me, you're going to want to get these games physically too. Which is why I've not only played all of these games myself, but I too actually own them. And you can too by using my affiliate links below. Nice. So without further ado, buckle up as we look at the top 10 games for retro gamers on Nintendo Switch. Welcome to Slope's Game Room. Caladrius Blaze is a game that shmup fans should be pretty familiar with. You could say that this game started its life on the Xbox 360 in Japan back in 2013 and has now become quite the desired item. That was before it was ported to the PlayStation 3, Steam, arcades and the PlayStation 4, and again, these versions have also become pretty sought after, especially the limited run PS4 copy. But thankfully, as of 2019, it actually made its way onto the Nintendo Switch, and it even comes in this sexy little tin. And if you are that person, you would be completely right. Caladrius Blaze is indeed a very Japanese-esque shmup with awesome as hell music and rather brilliant visuals, but its history is what got me interested in the game in the first place. You see, the game was actually made by a lot of the original team that worked on the incredibly influential Raiden back in the 90s, and after the original owners went under, a new studio was formed called Moss by most of Raiden's original team, who bought the Raiden name, and this game was made in between future Raiden releases. Oh, and by the way, there is also a Raiden game on the Switch too that has had some pretty good reviews, but in all honesty, I haven't actually played it enough myself to give you guys my opinion. So back to this game. In the game, you can choose to play the original 360 release, the arcade release, and the new Evolution mode. This results in the game having 6 stages and 8 characters that, as you would expect, all play slightly differently. And the gimmick for this shooter, as there always is a gimmick, consists of the different elemental shots that each ship can shoot. You can shoot constantly, as you would expect with the B button, but the different shot mechanics found when you shoot with the Y, X, and A gives this game so much variety. You need to keep an eye on each of the slowly replenishing gauges that will go down when using these elemental shots, but when you have them all over a certain number, you can wipe them all back to 0 with a big screen clearing bomb. This seems daunting, and in all honesty, it actually was a little at first. But when you get used to it and eventually complete it, you will be rewarded with being able to mix up these elements with other characters' elements too, which is super rewarding. And hey, whilst you're learning, at least you get to see these animated chicks lose their clothes as they get defeated. Because, you know, Japan. Okay. Now, obviously, we all know SNK. Games such as King of Fighters, Samurai Showdown, Fatal Fury, and of course, Metal Slug absolutely need no introduction at all. But what's awesome about this collection is that it doesn't feature any of those games. Nope. And sure, that may sound a bit crap, but for me, it's perfect. You can and probably already do own those games, but what you probably don't own are the 25 games found on this cartridge. The Ikari trilogy are must-plays for retro gamers. Alpha Mission and Vanguard were big deals for the company back in the day. The tank games are excellent. Athena, Baseball Stars, Crystallis, Alpha Mission. There are just so many great games, and you know, to be fair, not so great ones too, but as a gaming history fan, for me, it's awesome that they're just all on this one cartridge. Although do take note that you will actually need to download most of them for free, as it only shipped with 14 games and the remaining titles came in later. But what really sets it apart from other collections is its presentation. You can do all the usual stuff like rewind mid-game if that's your thing, but you can also watch the game being played too if that's your thing. You get the choice between arcade and console for the games that came out on both, but on top of that you also have the museum mode, giving you not only artwork from posters, concepts and manuals, but you also get little factoids whilst browsing this mode too. Without a doubt one of the best, if not the best collections going presentation wise. And sure, not all of the games are perfect by today's standards, but retro gaming fans out there, if you ask me, this collection is an absolute must. Okay. This one I actually don't own yet on the Switch, but I do have it pre-ordered. What you see here is obviously the PlayStation 4 version. Ghostblade HD is a game that's always fascinated me. It was an indie title that started its life on the Dreamcast. However, it was made after the death of that system, before being ported to the PlayStation 4 in all of its HD glory. And the version coming out on the Switch, just like the PlayStation 4 limited edition, comes with a reversible cover and music CD, which is absolutely incredible. But also a little mini Switch case that for some reason they seem to be doing quite a bit of at the moment. And yet another steelbook, because, you know, we all need more of them. Anyway, the game, yeah, it's another shmup with, seriously guys, one of the best indie soundtracks going. I can't suggest the soundtrack enough. It's worth it for that alone. You got 3 ships at your disposal, all of which play slightly differently as you would expect, and this game's gimmick, again there's always a gimmick with these games, is that you have a nice big broad shot that covers most of the screen, but you also have another attack that condenses your shot into a smaller line, making them more powerful, but at the same time completely slowing down your movement. Learning how to jump between these two modes is what will make you become a pro gamer at the game over time. But honestly, getting there will be quite the challenge. This is such an awesome cartridge to own. I can guarantee that pretty much every single person watching knows at least some of the games in this compilation, and if you like classic side-scrolling beat-em-ups, this is an absolute must. Kunio-Kun, the World Classics, is mostly a collection of Kunio-Kun games, including its sports spin-offs that were released during the Famicom and NES era. Guys, these games are a big deal, and even though it's not the complete collection, it's the vast majority. Heck, new games in the series are still being released to this day in Japan. I have the upcoming River City Girls and River City Melee Mac titles on pre-order. For Japanese gamers, games like this is essential, especially considering it features spin-off titles never before released in Japan. Games that us Western folk are a tad more familiar with. Renegade, Super Dodgeball, River City Ransom, Crash and the Boys Street Challenge, and of course, Double Dragon 1, 2 and 3. Currently guys, this is the only way to play all of these games, as you can't even get it digitally in the UK or America. The menus are very obviously inspired by the NES mini menus, and one of the compilation's coolest features, besides its added achievements and online play, which in all honesty I'm yet to actually try, is its quality up feature. Most games have this feature on the collection, and the best way of describing what it does is, well, imagine your NES or Famicom had a bit more beef under the hood. The classic multiple sprite-filled beat-em-up suffered with severe character flickering back in the day, and if you want to replicate that, you know, you can, but the quality up feature on this collection mostly removes it, making it arguably the ultimate way to play these classic games. I'm not going to spend too long on this one, as long-time fans of the show will know that I've actually done a complete history on this series, but in short, Wild Guns is a stunning, highly sought-after SNES game that is actually pretty unique. You control the cowboys at the bottom and shoot around the screen at everything that moves. As stated, its original game now goes for silly money, and this version is a complete reworking of that game with added characters, updated visuals, extra areas, and full widescreen gameplay. It essentially makes the original game a little bit pointless, which is good because where that is super expensive to get nowadays, this version is a budget title through and through. Plus, the soundtrack again is absolutely amazing. There is just one downside to it though. It looks easy, but it really isn't. Thankfully, this version has an extra character design for noobs like me to get to grips with, and newcomers will most definitely need to use that character. Thankfully, however, when you get good at the game, it will indeed become super addictive. This collection honestly needs absolutely no introduction. It may not have the biggest roster of games, but as far as side-scrolling beat-em-ups go, this has some of the very best in their true arcade format. Games such as Final Fight and Captain Commando are both so good that I've actually done complete histories on both titles, but on top of that, you have the King of Dragons, Knights of the Round, Warriors of Fate, Armored Warriors, and Battle Circuit. And those last two were never released on consoles in Western territories. So for me, it's these that make this collection shine. Armored Warriors is absolutely nuts. You play as a weird tank-like mech thing, destroying various other tank-like mech things, picking up their destroyed bodies and adding them to yours, making the replayability in this one go through the roof. And Battle Circuit, well, just look at it. It's crazy. The final beat 'em up in Capcom's arcade history of this era, and boy did they end with a game by chucking everything into the mix. There is just so much going on here that it's probably the very best retro game to play when you have your buddies over drinking beers and playing couch co-op. This release also features an awesome gallery, which, is always awesome. It features online multiplayer, which again is great, but just like before, I'm yet to use it. You can choose between both the Japanese and American arcade releases where available, and best of all, this too is a budget title even physically. Obviously, I picked it up, but to be fair, the more expensive version with each game's poster is pretty tempting. In case you are unaware, the Ninja Saviors series actually consists of only one game. Kind of. The original was released back in the arcades on a free screen setup. It was then reworked again for the SNES, and now it's been reworked again for the Nintendo Switch. And I think it's safe to say that this is the version to get. Now, honestly, straight off the bat, the game is stupidly hard. I very much struggled with this one at first, but, give it time, and just like Wild Guns Reloaded, when you get the hang of it, it will be worth it. The game is just so good when you learn how to play it properly. Extra characters, new challenges, a two-player mode, and obviously better graphics fill up the game and make it stand out against its earlier releases. And again, not only is the soundtrack awesome, but again, it's a budget title and well worth a pickup.
Awesome!
Death Road to Canada is the 7th release in East Asia Soft's limited run lineup. They sent this one to me for review, and honestly, I didn't actually play it for quite a while. It just didn't look all that. But boy, was I wrong. I'm not sure what the best way of describing this game is, as it's a bit of a mix of several different genres that I'm pretty sure haven't ever been put together like this in one game ever before. So, in the game, you play as a character that you choose and eventually customize with a couple of in-game friends, which again you choose and customize, and you attempt to make your way to Canada as America has been overrun by zombies. Obviously. Firstly, the game acts as a sort of text adventure with very little animation. You get to learn more about your friends' stats along the way as the story continues. Perhaps your car's going to break down. Perhaps you end up stopping for the night to sleep and have to decide who stays awake. Perhaps you pick up a hitchhiker and get them to join your team. Perhaps you come across bandits. What do? Do you run them over, fight them, or give up half your goods? All of these options, plus no doubt hundreds more, require you to make choices that are completely unique to each playthrough of the game. And learning not only what stats you have for each encounter is something that will make or break your journey on the Death Road to Canada. But obviously it doesn't stop there. You also have the ability to stop at certain locations on every in-game day to pick up supplies, which get increasingly hard to keep on top of as the game continues. And when you do, this is when the game turns into a sort of top-down shooter type game. The temptation to just, go nuts killing everything actually stops pretty early on in the game, as it's often better to stay as far away from the zombies as possible while searching the buildings and sometimes completely fleeing the scene before it's too late. It's only going to take 1, possibly 2 attempts for you to become completely obsessed with this game, and if you're like me, it will take over your life. As more and more big budget titles come through the door for my Nintendo Switch, all I found myself playing was this game over and over and over again. Okay, we're on to the final 2 releases here now, and I'm gonna cheat on both entries. Growing up in the UK, I didn't really know too much about Mega Man. He sadly wasn't that big of a deal over here. However, when I got the internet, and more specifically YouTube, boy did I hear about him. My God, do Americans like talking about Mega Man. You do know other games exist too, right? Well, as I stand by my retro gaming principles that classic games shouldn't just consist of games that you had as a kid, I thought it was finally time that I put some serious effort into these classic Mega Man games, starting with Rockman X. You know, the Japanese name for Mega Man, as if you guys needed to be told that. So far, the only release I have is this original Rockman X Anniversary Collection, as that seemed to be the most appealing for me, and you know what? Yes, I get the hype. This cartridge is mostly awesome. Not only does it have all of the usual Capcom collection goodies like art galleries, filters, music players, trailers, pictures of memorabilia, and a short anime released alongside an earlier PSP release, but of course it features the first 4 games and you get to choose between both the Japanese and American releases. There are more options too that I'll let you discover on your own, but even with some of the games in this series being stupidly expensive to get physically nowadays, I still do feel slightly ripped off that a Switch game only has 4 Super Nintendo ROMs included on it. Yep, Rockman X Anniversary Collection 2 is needed for the final 4 games in this series, and if you really want to go Rockman crazy, then you got another game for the earlier NES games and yet another upcoming release for the Zero and ZX titles too. And although I'm yet to get these titles, obviously, as I'm still working my way through the first 4 games, I definitely do see myself getting them, as it really would be quite an incredible Switch collection to own, and possibly the very best way to play what many people regard as the greatest 2D platformers of all time. And here we are guys, my top spot, and just like my previous entry, I'm cheating, because it's technically 3 releases that yet again very much could be put onto one cartridge. Yes, the Psycheoh collection was a series of Switch games that I knew I wanted, as I'd heard a lot of good things about Psycheoh, but honestly I knew very little about them. I'm not even sure that's how you pronounce the name. For those that are interested, what you've got here is a collection of 12 games spread across 3 releases, all of the shoot 'em up variety. Psycheoh were a Japanese developer that were known for making these types of games, and a good amount of erotic mahjong titles too, because, you know, Japan. They were founded in 1992 and lasted up until about 2005, with 2003 being the final proper release. Yes, this is the company that made those games. Anyway, the collection is full of mostly great releases by the company and a couple of stinkers in all honesty, with the Striker series and the Gunbird series easily being the best, in my opinion. If you was going to be getting these releases, I would suggest starting with these games, and Gunbird 2 is the absolute best of the bunch. For the most part, I'd say that most of the games feel the same. They mostly have the same mechanics, and although hardcore shmup fans may find them slightly too easy, For me, they are perfectly balanced. Plus, you can adjust the difficulty as much as you like as you get better at these games. In the games, you have your standard shots, your close range attacks, bombs and power-ups. You know, it's all standard fare in all honesty, but it just feels so incredibly well put together with these titles. On my way to Norway earlier on in the year, I decided to boot this up and give it a proper chance on the plane journey, and I was completely hooked for the entire trip. These games are just so addictive, and you never feel like, for the most part, that they're unfair. The mechanics are just so good that you end up exploring what else they have to offer. Dragon Blaze is yet again more of the same, but at the same time completely different looking. Gunbarrick, I think it's pronounced, is the oddest release, as it's a mix between Gunbird and the Breakout-like puzzle game. Pretty addictive, I must say. And then you got the legendary side-scrolling and stunning Tengai game, and probably the most out there of them all is Zero Gunner 2, which actually lets you hold down a button to hold your placement, resulting in you being able to shoot in all directions. It's odd, it takes some getting used to, but thankfully it's actually one of the easiest on here too, so you're gonna have a good time playing it. The final few, I'll let you decide, but honestly none of them stand out compared to what's already been displayed. The complete psycheoh collection is my number one choice for this list, as it was easily the biggest surprise, further proving that there will always be classic retro games to discover that completely do stand the test of time. And now that I have all three, I'm seriously tempted to sell that third release and get the limited edition. Not for the booby mouse mat, oh no, but instead that one piece of cardboard that holds it all together. Yeah, I know, it's a waste of money. And there you go guys, this list was surprisingly hard to put together, as there are just so many games that could have made the list, with increasingly weirder collections being released pretty much monthly in Japan. As stated, all of the games featured in this video can be found down below, and if you want to support the show, don't forget to use these affiliate links, and for further discounts make sure to add SGR at the checkout. Hey there guys, thanks for checking out the video. I want to give a big special shout out to everybody here that's supporting the show, and if you guys want to support the show you can do that by signing up to my Patreon or buying any of the games that you saw in this video or that you're seeing here above down in the top comment by going over to PlayAsia, and yeah, just by using that affiliate link below. It really does help the show, so thank you all very much. But let's give an extra big shout out to Gary Pinkett, Mantis, That Retro Video Gamer, Ryan Burford, Andrew Dalton, Ben Jackson, Jonathan Haywood, Kevin King, Christopher Turnbull, Phil Lowlins, Rovan Army, Ryan Holtz, Retro to Next Gen, Hawk89, Dina, Robertson Dunn, Adam Lefty Taylor, Intrigued Gaming, Tim Labonte, Asobi Quang DX, Tim Lunn, Pixels.Limited, aka Samuel Victor, Conrad Constantine, Pretendo64, Creamy Elephant, Casey Garner, Blitz Hedgie, Kinglink Reviews, Jim Knapp, Shadow Dial, Game Apologist, Chris Applin, Wobbles and Bean, The Wonder Ducks, Ye Old Hamburglar, Dan Petit, Lucas Softail, Ronnie Method SSWB, Solix Captor, Jeremy Rodriguez, Nick Pollard, Bram Perez, Marcus Kima Cuts, Tyndall, The Geeky Dad, Richard Carter aka Fantastic Dizzy, Todd Paul Float G, and of course Petty Mew. If you guys want to get your name shouted out, get your name shown, come and see what I'm working on and all of that usual stuff, then please click the links that you see on the screen. Don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, a thumbs down, whatever you prefer. But for now, this is DJ Slope signing out, and hopefully I will see you all next time.